Caleb Brooks was 34 years old, and for some time he gave everything he had to one woman and one future. He was a naval architect from Savannah. No family money, no shortcuts, just a firm he was building from nothing, and a fiancée who wore his ring while he cut his own salary to fund the life he had promised her. Then, one evening, his closest friend sat across from him and told him the truth. Lila had not left because she lost faith in his timeline. She had left because she had already chosen someone else while wearing his ring while he worked long hours for a future she had quietly abandoned. And on her way out she had taken something that was never hers to take. Now she had sent him an invitation. A waterfront engagement party. 200 guests. Her new life on full display. She wanted him to walk in from the parking lot and witness everything she had upgraded to. What Lila Beaumont did not know was what was sitting some distance offshore and what was about to dock. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe because the next story is one you need to hear. The morning fog rolled off Charleston Harbor like a silk sheet being drawn back, revealing the Meridian's elegant silhouette against the rose-gold sunrise. Caleb Brooks stood at his private slip, hands in the pockets of his worn leather jacket, watching his crew make their final preparations. The yacht was everything he had designed her to be, 220 feet of precision engineering and timeless beauty. A seabird called overhead as Caleb checked his father's watch. Its familiar weight on his wrist was a constant reminder of where he came from. The watch had kept perfect time through countless days on his father's fishing boat, and now it marked the moments of Caleb's own journey. He had come a long way from those early mornings helping his father cast nets into Savannah's waters. The used Ford F-150 he had driven to the marina sat in the parking lot. Its cracked dashboard vents still waited for the repair he kept meaning to schedule. He could afford any car he wanted now, but that was not the point. It never had been. The truck worked just fine, and Caleb had learned early that flash was not the same thing as substance. He watched Ryan, his lead engineer, directing the installation of the final navigation components. The Dubai Hospitality Group's delivery captain would arrive tomorrow to begin the handover process. Some time from now, the Meridian would embark on her maiden voyage, carrying Caleb's vision across oceans. The memory of Lila's smile flickered through his mind. Not the last one when she had returned his ring, but the one from that Tuesday night at the restaurant. He had chosen a quiet place. Nothing flashy, just good food and the harbor lights reflecting off the water. He could still feel the weight of the ring box in his pocket, the one he had designed himself and had crafted by an old jeweler in Savannah. "I want to give you everything," he had told her, holding her hands across the table. "Not most of it, everything, but I need time to build it right. Give me that, and I will never let you down." She had said yes with tears in her eyes, squeezing his hands tight. For some time after that, he had lived on minimal salary, pouring everything back into the firm. Working long hours became normal. He would fall asleep at his desk, wake up, and start again. Every blueprint, every meeting, every decision was aimed at the future they had planned together. Then came the morning she had walked into his office, the ring held carefully in her closed fist. "I need more certainty," she had said, her voice steady. "I cannot sustain this timeline anymore." He had not argued, had not tried to convince her otherwise. He had accepted the ring back, thanked her for her honesty, and buried himself in work once the door closed behind her. The sound of footsteps on the dock pulled Caleb from his thoughts. Ryan's familiar gait approached, but something was off in his rhythm. Caleb turned to find his COO and friend of some time holding a cream-colored envelope with an expression he had seen maybe twice before. Once, when they had nearly lost their first major contract, and once when Ryan's father had passed. "Beverly Beaumont dropped this at the office," Ryan said quietly. "In person. Asked the receptionist to make sure it got to you." The envelope was heavy, expensive paper stock. Caleb turned it over in his hands, noting the gold script before he even opened it. Lila Renee Beaumont and Derek Lang. Harbor View Pavilion, Hilton Head Island. A waterfront venue, naturally. Sometime from Saturday. His phone buzzed in his pocket before he had finished reading the full invitation. Renee's name lit up the screen. His best friend since their first day at Howard, the person who had been there for every milestone since. "Tell me you got one of these invitations," she said when he answered, "because I am holding mine right now, and I cannot decide if this woman is bold or completely delusional." Caleb looked down at the invitation in his hand, the harbor breeze lifting its edges. "I will call you back in a minute," he told Renee, his voice steady. "Need to handle something here first." He turned to Ryan, who had not moved from his spot on the dock. "Call the Hilton head harbor master. Book a slip for the Meridian, the weekend of the event." Ryan nodded, already pulling out his phone. This was their rhythm. Caleb giving clear directions, Ryan executing without question. Some time of friendship had taught them when to speak and when to move. "Renee is driving up," Caleb said. "We will meet at my place tonight." The day passed in a blur of meetings and paperwork, but Caleb moved through it with his usual precise focus. He signed off on the final navigation system tests, approved the crew rotation schedule, and answered 36 emails about the Dubai delivery. If anyone noticed him checking his father's watch more often than usual, they did not mention it. By evening, the harbor lights were reflecting off the water when Renee's car pulled into the parking spot next to his truck. She had made the drive from Atlanta in record time, her architect's portfolio still in the back seat from the client meeting she had cut short. Caleb's condo balcony faced the water, positioned perfectly to watch the boats coming and going. He had bought the place for the view, not to show off, but because his father had taught him to read water, and he liked being able to see it first thing every morning. The three of them settled into their comfortable chairs, glasses of bourbon in hand. The Meridian's running lights were visible from where they sat. Her elegant profile was unmistakable even in the growing darkness. "I have been holding something," Ryan said finally, setting his glass down. "For some time now. Got it at that maritime luncheon in Atlanta from Diana in Derek's office. She had a few drinks, wanted to clear her conscience." Renee leaned forward, her expression sharpening. She had known Ryan long enough to read the weight in his voice. "The timeline we got was not real," Ryan continued. "Lila did not leave because she lost faith in your progress. She left because she was already with someone else, had been for some time." The harbor breeze carried the sound of rigging clicking against masts somewhere in the darkness. "Derek Lang," Ryan said quietly. Beverly introduced them through her social circle. They had been seeing each other for some time before she gave the ring back. "The whole time you were working those long hours, cutting your own salary to keep the firm funded, she was already gone, just had not told you yet." Renee's hand tightened on her glass. "I held her on the phone for an hour when she ended it," she said, her voice barely controlled. "She cried about how much she still loved you, how hard it was to walk away, how she just needed more certainty." "She needed a clean exit," Ryan said. "Could not leave as the woman who cheated on her fiancé while he was building a future for them. Had to be the practical one who made a hard but necessary choice." Caleb had not moved since Ryan started speaking. He sat perfectly still, looking out at where the Meridian's lights reflected off the dark water. "Some time," he said finally. "I spent at least some time working for a future she had already decided against." The weight of that settled over the balcony. Some time of long hours, some time of sacrifice, some time of carrying her name as his reason for all of it. "The invitation was not an olive branch," Renee said. "It was a performance. She wants witnesses to how well it worked out for her." Caleb picked up his phone, checked the message from Ryan about the harbor master slip. "Sometime," he said. "You will be there?" "Already put in for the time off," Renee replied. "You know I am with you." They sat in silence after that, watching the harbor lights dance on the water. The Meridian's profile stood out against the darkness, everything Caleb had built it to be. Not a word was spoken for a long time. None needed to be. The Meridian's tender boat cut smoothly through the darkening water. Its wake barely disturbed the harbor's surface. Caleb sat perfectly straight, one hand resting on his father's watch while Renee adjusted her wine-red dress beside him. The evening air carried music and laughter from the Harbor View Pavilion ahead, where string lights traced graceful patterns against the deepening sky. "Ready?" Renee asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. Caleb had been ready since the moment Ryan handed him that invitation. He nodded once, his expression calm and focused, the same look he wore when reviewing design specifications or signing major contracts. This was just another carefully planned execution. From the tender, they could see the full sweep of the party. White-draped tables scattered across the waterfront terrace, champagne towers catching the light, servers weaving through clusters of well-dressed guests. At the center of it all stood Lila, in a champagne-colored dress that seemed chosen specifically to catch every flattering angle of light. Derek Lang's hand rested possessively at her waist, both of them the picture of calculated success. Beverly Beaumont moved through the crowd with practiced grace, pausing here and there to touch an arm or share a warm laugh. She kept glancing toward the parking lot entrance, her social radar tracking every arrival. Near the bar, a group of Howard University alumni huddled together, drinks in hand. "You think he actually shows?" one asked, leaning in conspiratorially. "She really invited him?" "She said they ended on good terms," another offered, "that she wanted him to see she was happy." A man in an expensive suit who had clearly never set foot on a boat chuckled. "I heard his little boat company is doing pretty well. For what it is." Lila had positioned herself strategically near the terrace entrance, angled to have the perfect view of the parking lot approach. She had thought this through carefully. Caleb walking in alone, crossing the crowded space while everyone watched, while she received him from her place of elevation with Derek beside her and success all around her. She checked the entrance again, adjusting her bracelet. The first heads turned toward the water almost simultaneously. A murmur started at the waterfront railing and rippled inward like a tide. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as more and more guests shifted to look. The Meridian moved through the harbor with the unhurried confidence of something that had never needed to announce itself. Her 220 feet of perfect engineering caught every string light and reflected it back, doubled. The name on her hull stood out clear and bold: Meridian, Wade Nautical Works. The party did not exactly stop. It transformed, like a room taking a sharp collective breath and holding it. The background music played on, but the human sounds, the laughter, the chatter, the clinking glasses, all suspended for 4 perfect seconds. The tender approached the dock with precise grace. Caleb stepped out first, his charcoal suit cutting a clean line in the evening light. He turned and offered his hand to Renee, who took it with the fluid elegance of someone who had practiced exactly this moment in her mind. Her wine-red dress caught the breeze just enough to seem intentional. They walked toward the party together, his measured steps matching hers perfectly. The silence followed them, broken only by whispers and the soft sound of their shoes on the dock. Lila's face did something complicated, a series of micro-expressions cycling through as her carefully rehearsed greeting collapsed. The gracious smile she had practiced for a parking lot arrival had no foundation here. Derek's jaw tightened visibly, his hand tensing at Lila's waist. Beverly's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips and stayed there, forgotten. Caleb's eyes found Lila's across the terrace. His smile was neither cruel nor triumphant, just the settled expression of a man who had already done all the necessary calculations and was simply waiting for everyone else to complete theirs. He reached for a champagne flute as a server passed, his movement casual and unhurried. Without taking his eyes from Lila's, he spoke to Renee just loudly enough for the nearest circle of guests to hear clearly. "Beautiful venue. Good water access." Renee raised her glass in silent response, her eyes holding all the words that did not need to be said. The altered atmosphere settled over the party like a fine mist. Glasses clinked and conversations continued, but every laugh seemed just a touch too deliberate, every gesture slightly more considered. The string lights still sparkled against the darkening sky, but they now felt less like celebration and more like spotlight. Lila took exactly some time to reconstruct her composure. She smoothed her champagne-colored dress, touched her perfectly styled hair, and approached Caleb with the gracious smile she had spent some time perfecting. It worked harder now, the corners of her mouth tighter than she had planned. "Caleb," she said warmly, as though his arrival by super yacht had not just rewritten her entire evening. I am so glad you could come." He turned to her with the easy courtesy he showed everyone, clients, employees, strangers, nothing more, nothing less. "Beautiful party," he said, his voice carrying no edge at all. "The flowers are lovely, smart choice for the season." She waited for more, for some crack in the surface where she could find the hurt man she had prepared herself to manage. He gave her nothing but polite small talk about the venue and a question about the catering service that could have been asked by any guest at any party. When she left his orbit some time later, she had nowhere to put her hands. The narrative she had built, the gracious ex-fiancé helping a wounded man move forward, had no purchase here. Near the bar, Arthur Price, one of Derek's most prominent business associates, was staring at the Meridian's illuminated hull with dawning recognition. The Savannah waterfront developer's face shifted through several expressions rapidly. "Wade Nautical," he said, half to himself. "The Meridian Commission." He turned to his colleague. "My firm has been trying to get on their consultation calendar for some time. They keep saying they are booked through the end of the year." He watched Caleb with new attention, mentally relocating himself from the wrong side of the room to wherever Caleb Brooks was standing. Derek appeared at Caleb's elbow some time later, deploying the specific charm he reserved for neutralizing potential complications. His smile carried the easy confidence of a man who had never lost a room he wanted to keep. "The yacht is extraordinary," he said, extending his hand. "I would love to hear about the design process." Caleb shook his hand with professional courtesy. He answered Derek's questions about the Meridian with the same measured attention he gave to all serious inquiries about his work. Nothing performative, nothing sharp. Just before moving away, he offered one sentence, delivered without emphasis, like a simple observation. "Congratulations. She always knew exactly the life she wanted." Derek's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. The words settled into him like small weights he could not put down, each one carrying a meaning he had not calculated for. Across the terrace, Renee found Beverly Beaumont holding court among her usual circle of admirers. Beverly turned to her with practiced warmth, layering her greeting with the precise social grace she had spent 3 decades perfecting. "Renee, darling," she began, reaching to touch her arm. "It has been too long." Renee's voice was quiet but carried clearly. "Was the invitation your idea or hers?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Beverly's smile stayed perfectly in place, but something behind her eyes started calculating rapidly. Before she could construct a response, Renee had already turned away, leaving Beverly standing with an unfinished gesture and the growing certainty that she did not know what Renee knew. The party continued around them, but the frequencies had shifted permanently. Every conversation now carried an undercurrent of recalculation. The string lights seemed dimmer somehow, though nobody had touched them. Caleb and Renee left before the party's official end, not dramatically, not making a point of it. They simply walked back to the tender dock together. Their steps matched as naturally as they had on arrival. Behind them, the party's ambient sound had changed in a way that was subtle but unmistakable, like an orchestra that had lost its conductor but was trying to continue without acknowledging it. Caleb did not look back once. The Meridian's lights drew clean lines across the dark water as their tender approached. "She did not expect that," Renee said quietly, adjusting her wine-red dress against the evening breeze. Caleb watched the yacht's reflection ripple on the harbor surface. "She never did," he said. Morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Caleb's Charleston office. The harbor view stretched out beyond the glass where the Meridian's empty slip waited for its final preparations. Some time until delivery. The work did not stop for parties or revelations. Caleb had been at his desk since early, reviewing the handover documentation with the same careful attention he gave every detail of his operation. His father's watch sat beside his laptop. He never wore it while working with technical documents, a habit born from years of protecting it from ink and coffee. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of the climate control system and the occasional ping of early morning emails. Most of the team would not arrive for another hour. This was his time, the space between night and day when he did his clearest thinking. Ryan's knock came some time later. 3 quick taps that carried their own weight. Caleb recognized the cadence from some time ago when the invitation arrived. He looked up to find Ryan in the doorway holding a manila folder, wearing that same careful expression. "Renee came through," Ryan said simply, crossing to the desk. "Diana in Derek's office, the one who has been documenting everything since their restructuring cost her team their positions." Caleb set his pen down and took the folder. The first page was an email printout, clean and official with all headers intact. Beverly Beaumont's name appeared in the sender field. The timestamp placed it sometime before Lila returned his ring. He read it once, then again. His expression did not change, but his hand went still on the page. Beverly's language was precise and deliberate. She described her daughter as being in a transitional situation with a fiancé she was preparing to leave. The phrasing carried the careful construction of someone who had chosen every word for maximum effect while maintaining plausible deniability. The follow-up exchange was even more direct. Derek's assistant had asked for clarity about Lila's relationship status. Beverly's response left no room for misinterpretation. "Yes, she is currently engaged, but to someone who cannot provide what Lila needs." The word engaged appeared in Beverly's own typing, underlined for emphasis, not hidden, not softened, stated plainly as a fact to be worked around rather than a commitment to be respected. "Renee kept everything," Ryan said quietly. She said Derek knew exactly what he was walking into. He made the choice with full information. Caleb turned to the second page, then the third. The timeline assembled itself with mechanical precision. Derek had not stumbled into a complicated situation. He had not met Lila by chance and found himself caught in something neither of them had planned. He had looked at a woman wearing another man's ring and decided she was available if he wanted her badly enough. The choice had been entirely conscious. The cost to someone else had been acceptable to him. Caleb read the full file twice more, absorbing every detail with the same attention he gave to structural calculations. When he finished, he reached for his phone and called Renee. She picked up on the first ring. He could hear the hotel room coffee maker in the background. "Derek knew about the ring," he said simply. The silence that followed lasted nearly a full minute. He could hear her breathing change slightly. The specific tension of someone processing information that changed everything they thought they understood. "From the beginning?" she asked finally. "From Beverly's first contact." Another pause. "So she was with him and wearing your ring at the same time and he knew?" "Yes." "Todos." "Caleb, I know. What do you need?" He looked out at the harbor where the morning sun was drawing silver lines across the water. The Meridian's empty slip waited. The work continued. "Derek's part of it now," he said. "Hold the timeline. Everything you saw from the proposal through the end. Be ready to speak to all of it if I need you to." "Done," she said without hesitation. "Anything else?" "Not yet." He ended the call and opened his desk drawer. The ring box sat where it had for some time. Clean lines, dark blue leather, custom made to his specifications like everything else he built. He set the folder beside it and closed the drawer. The Meridian delivery was some time out. The handover documentation needed his signature. He picked up his pen and returned to work. The Meridian's departure left an empty space in the Charleston harbor that morning. A physical absence Caleb could see from his office window. The delivery captain had sailed at dawn, starting the long journey to Dubai. The handover had been clean, professional, exactly as planned. Now Caleb sat at his desk reviewing a stack of financial documents his accountant Marcus had flagged during what should have been a routine historical audit. The morning light caught the edge of his coffee cup, still untouched. He had been reading the same page for some time, trying to make sense of what the numbers were telling him. Marcus had highlighted several entries from the period some time ago, the final stretch of his engagement to Lila. "These access logs do not match any normal bookkeeping patterns," Marcus had said, pointing to a series of system timestamps. She was pulling files that had nothing to do with accounts. Caleb remembered clearly why Lila had access to those systems. She had offered to help with the books during the firm's early growth phase when they were still operating lean and reinvesting everything. He had trusted her completely. She was wearing his ring, building their future alongside him. The thought left a metallic taste in his mouth now. The highlighted entries showed systematic copying of files, client contact databases, vendor agreements, material sourcing contracts. But the timestamps that made his hand go still were attached to a specific set of design files. His preliminary concept work for a mid-range charter vessel developed before the Meridian Commission had put Wade Nautical on the international radar. He opened his laptop and pulled up a browser window. Some time after Lila left, while he was still processing what he thought was a mutual recognition of incompatibility, Coastal Marine Design had announced a new vessel concept that had caught attention in the Charleston maritime community. He found their promotional materials with 3 clicks. The design was his. Not similar. Not inspired by his work. Translated almost line for line into their documentation. They had never explained where the concept originated. Now he knew. She had taken his work while wearing his ring. While he was working long hours to build their future, she had been copying his designs to hand to his competitors. The betrayal was architectural. She had dismantled their relationship from the inside out, piece by piece, while he kept building. His finger touched his father's watchband absently. He picked up his phone and dialed Walter Banks's direct line. His corporate attorney answered on the second ring. "Walter, I need you to review something. Today, if possible. I have an hour at some time. Bring what you have." Walter's office was all dark wood and leather. Old Charleston money made professional. He reviewed the documentation without expression. The system logs, the timestamps, the competitive analysis showing market timing and design similarity. Ryan had assembled everything in sequence, backed by Marcus's audit findings. When he finished reading, Walter set the folder down and looked at Caleb over his reading glasses. "Trade secret misappropriation," he said simply. "The access logs establish chain of custody. The market timing is clear. The design similarity is inarguable. We have a case." "How clean." "Very. The documentation is complete. The timeline is tight. The competitive harm is quantifiable." Walter's tone was clinical, like a doctor delivering test results. "We can file as soon as you give the word." Caleb looked out Walter's window at the harbor. The same water, different angle. The Meridian's wake was long gone. "Not yet," he said. "I want to be in position first." Walter nodded once, understanding exactly what that meant. He had represented Wade Nautical since the beginning. He had watched Caleb build from nothing, carefully and completely. He knew how the man worked. "I will prepare the filing," Walter said. "Ready when you need it." The drive home was quiet. Charleston's evening lights painted silver lines on the harbor water. His truck's cracked dash vent still needed fixing. His father's watch caught the streetlight as he turned onto his street. The betrayal had layers he was still discovering, but the work continued. He had learned that from his father. You finish what you start, no matter what changes around you. The water was the same. The path was the same. Only the company had changed. The morning sun painted long shadows across Caleb's office as he spread the assembled pieces across his desk. Charleston was still waking up outside. The harbor traffic light, the city holding its breath before the day began. He touched each document in turn, mapping the board with the same precision he used when designing vessel structures. Walter's prepared filing lay open, clean, and clinical in its documentation of trade secret misappropriation. The chain of custody was detailed in Marcus's audit findings. System timestamps showing Lila's systematic extraction of proprietary design work while she still wore his ring. The competing firm's market launch sometime after she left created a perfect timeline of intent and execution. The legal framework was ready, waiting only for his word. Renee's written statement sat beside it. Her willingness to formalize what she witnessed in Derek's Atlanta office if litigation became necessary. Her documentation of Beverly's initial outreach, the explicit acknowledgement of Lila's engagement, Derek's choice to proceed anyway. The word engaged remained underlined in Beverly's own language, a permanent record of informed participation. Ryan's email archive filled another folder. Every communication between Beverly and Derek's team organized chronologically. The progression was clear. From initial contact through courtship to the final execution, all while Caleb worked long hours building what he thought was their shared future. Ryan had assembled it meticulously, the way he did everything. Renee's witness value was less tangible but equally vital. She had been present for every critical moment. The proposal dinner she helped plan. The ring Caleb designed. The phone call where she comforted Lila after the breakup while Lila constructed her exit narrative. Her account of that period was precise and complete, ready to be formalized whenever Caleb chose. He opened his laptop and found 2 new emails that shifted the entire timeline. The first was from the Atlantic Maritime Development Conference Organizing Committee, an invitation to join their design panel in Atlanta sometime out. The subject line mentioned the Meridian specifically. They wanted the architect of a successful commission on their stage. He opened the conference schedule PDF. There, in the morning keynote slot, Derek Lang speaking on waterfront real estate development trends. Neither of them had arranged this intersection. The professional world had simply drawn them into the same room. The second email was from his longtime client Thomas Chen, who sat on Charleston's Maritime Regulatory Advisory Board. A courtesy heads up. Derek's major waterfront development project had been pending consultation for some time. The project could not advance without advisory approval, and Thomas was the key voice on maritime consideration. Caleb opened his calendar. He could see the whole board now. The conference would put Derek in front of the maritime community as a keynote speaker on waterfront development while his actual project sat stalled. The consultation timing was completely in Caleb's control. He scheduled it for the week after Atlanta. Not to block the project, he had no interest in obstruction. But the timing mattered. Derek needed to understand exactly who he had underestimated before that consultation happened. His father's tackle box sat beside his desk. Weathered wood, salt-worn brass fittings. Some time of fishing mornings held in the grain. He opened the top drawer and removed a single envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter he had composed some time after Lila left when the grief was still raw and the truth still hidden. He had never sent it. He placed it in the drawer and closed it quietly. He might not need it now. The assembled pieces would speak more clearly than any letter could. His phone buzzed. Renee checking in from Atlanta. He let it go to voicemail. Outside his window, the harbor traffic was picking up. Boats moving through morning light. The water knew what it was doing. So did he. He made no calls to Lila or Derek. He posted nothing online, made no public statements, gave no indication that anything was in motion. The people who needed to know already knew. Everyone else would understand soon enough. The morning sun had shifted, painting new shadows across his desk. He gathered the documents into his father's tackle box, each piece in its place. The work would speak for itself. It always had. He closed the drawer with the letter inside. The brass fitting caught the light like his father's old watch. Some things did not need to be said. They just needed to be true. The Savannah restaurant gleamed with old-world charm. Polished wood, brass fixtures, white tablecloths pressed crisp as judgment. Renee arrived sometime early and chose a corner table with clear sightlines. She wore a simple navy dress that meant business, her architect's precision evident in every clean line. Beverly Beaumont swept in exactly on time, perfectly composed in cream linen and pearls. Her entrance carried 3 decades of social mastery, the kind of presence that usually commanded any room it entered. She moved toward Renee with practiced warmth, arms opening for an embrace that assumed its welcome. "Renee, darling, it has been too long." Renee stood but did not step forward, letting Beverly's attempted embrace become an awkward pause. "Thank you for meeting me, Beverly." Beverly recovered smoothly, settling into her chair with the fluid grace of someone who had never lost a social exchange in her memory of events. Of course. We have such history after all. And after the party." She let the sentence trail diplomatically. "Yes," Renee said quietly. "After the party." The waiter appeared with water, crystal glasses catching afternoon light. Beverly ordered white wine with the easy authority of someone who knew the wine list without looking. Renee requested sparkling water, her voice level and unhurried. "I have been thinking about that night," Beverly continued, her tone carefully modulated. Perhaps the invitation was premature, but Lila so wanted to include everyone who matters to her. Renee let the silence stretch until Beverly's wine arrived. She watched Beverly take the first practiced sip, waiting for the moment she felt most secure in her social choreography. Then she placed the folder on the white tablecloth. "I need you to look at something, Beverly." Beverly's smile remained fixed, but her eyes flickered to the folder. "What is this about?" "This is about what you knew and when you knew it." Renee opened the folder with architect's precision. "This is your email to Derek's assistant, the first contact while Lila was still wearing Caleb's ring." She turned the page so Beverly could read her own words. The date, the phrase transitional situation, the word engaged underlined in Beverly's careful language. "This is your follow-up describing Caleb as someone who could not provide what Lila needed. You wrote that while he was cutting his own salary to keep his firm funded, while he was working long hours building exactly what she said she wanted." Beverly's hand trembled slightly as she set her wine glass down. "Renee, I do not know where you got these, but—" "Renee in Derek's office provided them. She has agreed to make a formal statement if necessary." Renee's voice remained perfectly controlled. "She remembers every conversation." The restaurant continued its elegant afternoon rhythm around them, but Beverly's carefully constructed poise was cracking. Her fingers moved to her pearls, an unconscious tell. "What does he want?" The question came out smaller than Beverly intended. "Caleb does not want anything from you, Beverly." Renee closed the folder deliberately. "But Lila needs to tell Derek everything. The complete truth. The ring, the timeline, the affair, how it actually started. Not a version. All of it. I do not see why before the conference." Renee's voice was quiet but carried absolute certainty. "She needs to tell him before Caleb does." Beverly's social arsenal, 3 decades of gracious deflection and careful management, found no purchase here. She reached for her water glass, found it still full, set it down again. "You raised her to measure a man by what he had in his hand right now," Renee said, each word precise as a blade. "Not what he was building, not who he was, just what he could provide in that moment, and she believed you completely." She stood, smoothing her dress with steady hands. "Think about what that cost him, Beverly, and what it is going to cost her." She left the folder on the white tablecloth beside Beverly's untouched water glass. The restaurant's afternoon light painted long shadows across the table, across Beverly's frozen expression, across the documented evidence of choices that could no longer be managed through social grace. Beverly sat alone, her carefully constructed world splintering around the edges. Her phone lay in her purse, Lila's number stored in favorites, a call she now had to make. The folder sat like a judgment between her water glass and her half-finished wine. She had spent 30 years teaching her daughter to curate the right life. She had never imagined having to tell her that the life she chose might cost more than either of them calculated. The restaurant continued its elegant afternoon dance around her. But Beverly Beaumont, for the first time in 30 years of social navigation, had no performance left to give. That evening she made the call. Lila answered on the second ring, her voice bright with wedding preparation. Beverly's carefully prepared words dissolved. What came out instead was simply, "We need to talk about what actually happened." The silence on the other end told her Lila was not ready for this conversation. Neither of them was. But it had to happen now. The Atlanta Conference Center's grand ballroom gleamed with understated wealth. Brass chandeliers, mahogany panels, plush carpeting that swallowed footsteps. Caleb adjusted his navy suit cuff, his father's watch catching morning light. He moved through the pre-keynote crowd with quiet purpose, nodding to industry acquaintances who had suddenly discovered urgent reasons to make his connection. Derek Lang owned the podium during his morning keynote. His tailored charcoal suit and commanding presence spoke of old money and newer ambitions. He delivered his waterfront development vision with the practiced confidence of a man who had never needed to doubt his place at the center of any room. The future of American coastal development lies in understanding that luxury is not just an amenity, it is an expectation, Derek declared, his voice carrying authority to the back row. The audience of developers and maritime professionals nodded in appreciation. He was good at this. He had always been good at this. Caleb sat near the middle, watching with architect's attention. Not the performance, the structure underneath. The way Derek built his certainty on the assumption that what he wanted was always worth pursuing, regardless of the cost to others. It was familiar now, having seen it from a different angle. The afternoon panel setup transformed the ballroom. 5 chairs, water glasses, microphones arranged with precision. The moderator, a respected industry publisher, took the center position. Caleb sat second from the left, posture relaxed but present. Derek chose the front row, his expression suggesting he expected a routine industry discussion. The moderator began introductions, moving down the line with practiced efficiency. And joining us from Charleston, Caleb Brooks, founder and principal architect of Wade Nautical Works. Designer of the Meridian super yacht, recently delivered to Dubai. Holder of 2 additional international commissions totaling some significant amount. Recipient of this year's International Marine Design Award for Innovation in Sustainable Luxury Vessels. Derek's face moved through micro-expressions. Recognition, recalculation. The specific discomfort of a man discovering he had badly misread the game board. He had not researched his fiancée's former fiancé. He had assumed, as he always did, that his position was superior by default. The panel proceeded with professional courtesy. Caleb spoke with quiet authority on design evolution and environmental responsibility in luxury vessels. He did not perform expertise. He simply had it. During the reception, Derek found him near a window overlooking Atlanta's skyline. The practiced charm was still present but working harder now. "Impressive work with the Meridian," Derek offered, testing the professional water. "I was not aware of the scale of your operation." "We keep it quiet," Caleb said simply, sipping sparkling water. "I think we may have some overlapping professional interests in Charleston." Derek shifted angles smoothly. "The consultation next week?" "Sometime," Caleb confirmed. "We will see what the project needs." Derek paused, visibly recalibrating. He had always moved through the world assuming every situation could be managed through social fluency. He deployed his final available tool. "Lila speaks well of you." Caleb met this with complete steadiness. His voice carried no anger, no bitterness, only the weight of something that needed to be said. "She should tell you the complete story of how your relationship started," he said quietly. "The timeline, what she was wearing when you met, what she had on her finger. You are about to marry her. You deserve to know what it cost someone else for that to happen." He extended his hand, a gesture simultaneously professional and final. Derek shook it because there was nothing else to do. Caleb walked away without looking back, leaving Derek holding a truth he was not prepared to face. That night, in their hotel suite, Derek confronted Lila. She was still in her conference dinner dress, scrolling through wedding vendor emails on her phone. His voice carried an edge she had never heard before. "Tell me exactly when we met. What you were wearing, all of it." She looked up, her carefully maintained composure cracking at the edges. "Derek." "Truth, Lila, every piece." Across 2 conversations, one that night, one the next morning, the full picture emerged. Not the sanitized version she had constructed. Not the pragmatic choice she had framed it as, the raw truth. She had worn another man's ring to their first meeting. She had carried on their relationship while that man worked long hours building a future she had already decided to abandon. She had used his devotion as cover while she engineered her exit. Derek sat in the hotel armchair, dawn painting Atlanta's skyline behind him. He was looking at a mirror he had never wanted to face. A man who had knowingly participated in dismantling another man's engagement, who had decided his desired outcome was worth whatever someone else paid to provide it. He had always moved through the world this way. He had never before had to see it clearly in return. Walter Banks's office overlooked Charleston Harbor, the morning sun painting the water gold. His phone rang, Lila's attorney requesting a private resolution. No filing necessary. Walter's expression did not change. He had expected this call. "We can discuss terms," he said, his voice carrying the specific gravity of someone who knew exactly what leverage looked like. "I have the documentation prepared." The conversation proceeded with professional efficiency. Lila's attorney acknowledged the document transfer without using the word theft. Walter deployed trade secret misappropriation once, letting it land without emphasis. The terms emerged clearly: a substantial payment to Wade Nautical Works, a non-disclosure agreement with precise language, and, most importantly, a documented record that would live permanently in both firms' archives. What was taken, by whom, and when? The settlement papers arrived by courier that afternoon. Walter reviewed each page with meticulous attention, noting how Lila's signature carried a slight tremor on the final document. The record was established now. The narrative she had constructed could no longer be maintained. Derek's Charleston waterfront development project met its end with similar efficiency. The regulatory maritime consultation, conducted by the advisory body whose key member had worked with Wade Nautical for some time, revealed what Caleb had not needed to expose: a pattern of over-leveraged financial commitments that made the project fundamentally unstable. The advisory body's report was clinical and devastating. Two of Derek's Atlanta investment partners began quietly reducing their exposure within days. Arthur Price, the Savannah developer who had recalibrated his entire understanding of the room at Lila's engagement party, did not waste time. His email arrived at Wade Nautical with a competing Charleston proposal already attached. He had read the situation correctly. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. The engagement ended sometime after Atlanta. Derek returned the ring through his attorney. A carefully worded statement went out to the guest list. They had decided to move in different directions. The truth lived in the spaces between those words, in hotel room conversations where Derek finally heard the complete story. In moments where Lila had to face what she had actually done rather than what she had told herself she was doing. Lila Beaumont did not speak to her daughter for some time. When she finally did, she did not apologize, but she also never mentioned Caleb Brooks' name again. Some reckonings happen in silence. Lila did not try to contact Caleb. There was nothing left to say that would not make it worse. Sometime later, Dubai's night air carried warmth that felt nothing like Charleston. Caleb stood on the Meridian's aft deck, the inaugural voyage reception winding down behind him. Ryan's laugh carried from somewhere inside, that full, unrestrained sound that filled any space it occupied. Renee stood at the rail beside him in a dress the color of deep water, holding a glass of sparkling water, looking out at where the Arabian Gulf met the horizon. The hospitality group's reception had been extraordinary. Crystal and white flowers and careful attention. Caleb had stepped away early, needing the quiet. The city burned against the dark. A declaration of ambition made physical. The water moved beneath the yacht with patient power. Wade Nautical's second commission, a private vessel for a London-based entertainment executive, was deep in design phase. The Miami office would open some time from now. A documentary series about American maritime design had been in conversation with his team for some time, wanting to feature the Meridian's journey from concept to completion. Caleb held his father's watch in his closed fist, feeling its weight. His father used to do this with the fishing boat's wheel at the end of a good day. Not gripping it, just resting his hand there, feeling what was underneath. The watch carried that same certainty now. He had built this future for the woman he loved. She had not waited for it. He built it anyway. He opened his hand, put the watch on, buckled the band with careful attention. The water moved beneath them, dark and knowing. He looked out at it, Renee quiet beside him, Ryan's laugh carrying from inside. The city burning on the horizon. He was exactly where he said he was going to be. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you do not miss the next story. I have picked out 2 more for you that I think you will really like.